For a period of my life in Singapore, I lived inside a really bad mental trap. And I don't think it's unique to me. I see it in a lot of capable, high-performing people, especially those who are particularly obsessed with the future version of their life, whilst not enjoying entirely the present one as much as they should. Here's how the trap catches you. You get curious about trying something new. Maybe it's writing or recording or learning a new skill, training for something, starting, well, anything. And almost immediately, your brain shuts it down. It says, it won't work. It's probably a waste of time. I don't have the energy. Or what's the point if it doesn't go anywhere? And then you don't do it. And when you repeat this pattern for years, prioritizing only work and optimization and progression, future life, it becomes toxic. But there's a paradox here. You don't actually save that time. Instead, you just spend it elsewhere, endlessly scrolling, reorganizing your kitchen drawers for the third time this month, turning on Netflix, spending 20 minutes choosing an episode, and then watching half of it whilst checking your phone, firing up a game or YouTube just to relax, and suddenly it's 10:50 at night and time for bed. There's nothing terrible in those examples, but nothing memorable either. Just time disappearing, flittering away. And that's what I call the waste of time fallacy, because the real comparison is never, will this new thing work? It should be, is this new thing more meaningful than what I'll do instead? And I think most of the time, if we're honest, the answer will be yes. You've built the career, you're building the portfolio, you're close to freedom. So what now? Welcome to Life After Enough. Money, meaning, and the life you design when work becomes optional. I'm Nick. I'm racing towards early retirement and figuring out who I become when the job no longer dictates what I do with my time. Let's get into it. Today's episode is shorter than usual, but it's one of the most important ideas we've talked about so far. I talked about this briefly in an earlier episode, but it's worth saying again properly. During my sabbatical, I delayed starting this podcast, something I wanted to do for years. The main reason was that I told myself it would be a waste of time. The familiar internal script fired up again, as usual. No one would listen, it wouldn't go anywhere, it wouldn't count for anything. And meanwhile, what was I doing in the alternative? Netflix, games, cleaning, busy work disguised as rest, none of which moved my life forward in any discernible way. And that's when I had this realization that changed things for me. If I was already prepared to, quote, waste time, why not waste it on something I was actually curious about? And then that single question seemed to break the spell that had this hold on me. It's strange how your brain can turn against you. At first, it feels sensible, protective, even mature. But once you start following this pattern, it becomes insidious. Everything new is treated as a threat, something to postpone or minimize or avoid. And then very quickly, everything unfamiliar starts to feel off limits. The danger isn't that you stop trying big things. It's that you stop trying anything that sits even slightly outside of your comfort zone. And if you're not careful, this avoidance compounds. Day by day, decision by decision, you build a life that feels increasingly narrow, not because it was chosen to be that way, but because it was never challenged. And I think that's how these weird mental prisons start to form in our heads, through caution that went unchecked. From the outside, it can look like stability, but from inside, it becomes suffocating. So with that in mind, why do our brains even do this? Why do they block experiments? And why does it feel so convincing? I think we don't avoid experiments with new activities and ideas because we're lazy. I think we avoid them because trying creates psychological risk. The moment you consider doing something new, our brain runs a silent danger calculation. Instead of asking, will this make me happy? Your brain is concerned about, will this threaten who I am? Identity protection is one of the brain's highest priorities. It's right up there with avoiding physical danger. So if your identity is tightly wrapped around being competent and productive and successful, or being the reliable one, then being a beginner again feels dangerous, even if objectively it's harmless. Think about how you felt the last time you went to a new exercise class, or an uncomfortable team bonding experience, or just tried a new sport where everyone else knows what they're doing. Trying means exposure, and exposure means judgment. Judgment means the possibility of feeling small and awkward or not good at something. Your nervous system doesn't care that this is just a silly hobby. It processes it in a different way, as uncertainty, effort, unclear reward. And biologically, that's a terrible deal. Under the hood, your brain is balancing two major systems, one that seeks reward and one that avoids threat and energy loss. Low-effort activities like doom scrolling, TV, casual games, minor chores, well, they deliver fast, predictable dopamine. There's no learning curve, no evaluation, and there's no chance of discovering you're bad at something. Trying something new, on the other hand, flips that equation. The dopamine is delayed. All of the effort is up front, and the outcome is almost certainly uncertain. In those circumstances, your brain will tend to nudge you toward what it perceives as being safe by generating thoughts that feel reasonable. I'm too tired tonight. I'll do it when I have more energy. Or what's the point unless I can do it properly? These aren't character flaws, they're just protective scripts. Psychologists call this avoidance learning. Every time you choose the safer option, your brain learns, good, crisis avoided, leading to short-term relief, but also long-term stagnation. But there is a clear cost to this. When you repeatedly choose low-risk, low-reward time fillers, your brain starts to associate novelty with stress, familiarity with relief. And over time, curiosity will weaken and your motivation will fade. We all know someone who's stuck in their ways. This is where the trap ultimately leads. You become that curmudgeon-type person who's hesitant to try anything new, closed off to new experiences. The person who says, I'm old enough to know what I like, and leaves it at that. Eventually, it hardens into a belief that you just don't have any interests anymore. But it's not because you're uninteresting. It's just because you've trained your nervous system to avoid being a beginner. I think there's one more layer that really matters as well, especially if you're on the path to financial independence. Trying something new doesn't just risk failure, it also risks success. Because what if you do enjoy it? What if it lights you up? What if it exposes how narrow your current life has become in your pursuit of financial independence? That question then threatens the structure holding everything together. If you enjoy something more than work, what does it say about your career, your sacrifices, your timeline? Your brain will then step in again and say, better not open that door. Instead, it offers the illusion of productivity, emails, optimization, admin, tidy kitchens, another episode, another scroll. Just stay busy. You stay safe. You stay exactly who you've been. And that's the real trap and the real cost. Not trying doesn't just keep things the same. It shrinks your sense of who you could be. That business idea never gets tested, so you never find out whether you are capable of building something on your own terms. That social enterprise never helps anyone, not because it wasn't viable, but because it never left your head. And that skill you were curious about, well, it never gets learned. And with it, an entire alternate version of your life disappears into smoke. It shows up in smaller ways too. You never discover what you enjoy doing when no one's watching. You never learn how to start something without external validation, and you never build trust in your ability to follow curiosity rather than obligation. If I'm brutally honest, I think for a long time I was one of those, quote, uninteresting people. I struggled to find an answer to the question of what I actually enjoyed with my free time. And what's interesting is how I did answer that question when it did come up. I'll default to my pre-fire identity. I'd say things like, I'm into skiing, I love mountain climbing, and I'm all about adventure travel. But when I really looked at my life, that story didn't hold up. I hadn't climbed a mountain in over 10 years. I hadn't traveled in any genuinely adventurous way for 7. They weren't current interests. They were just this residual identity that I carried with me. They were the things I used to be or wanted to believe I still was because they sounded aligned with the kind of person I thought I should be. That is what I meant earlier when I talked about the toxic mental state I'd slipped into. I think part of it was shaped by those austere COVID years in Singapore. Long, endless stretches of restriction and sameness and survival mode. Life really narrowed and curiosity naturally just had to shrink. Everything became about getting through rather than exploring what life can offer. But once that period ended, And once I finally gave myself space during the sabbatical, I was able to see it far more clearly. I wasn't being lazy. I wasn't uninteresting, thankfully. I was just operating from this outdated way of thinking about myself. And since then, I've landed on a very different way of looking at this, one that's far more forgiving, far more energizing, and far more useful. And that brings me to the reframe. Quick pause. If this episode is sparking something for you, hit follow so you don't miss what's coming next. Feel free to share it with someone who'd love it too. It really helps the show to grow. A different way to think about all of this is that in trying something new, you're not committing to a new identity, you're not choosing a new path, and you're not deciding this whole big future. All you're doing is running a small experiment. 30 minutes of writing, well, that doesn't make you a writer. Recording a voice note doesn't make you a podcaster. And trying a few training sessions doesn't lock you into anything at the gym. It simply answers one question. Is this more alive than what I would have done instead? That's it. And this matters before financial independence, not afterwards. If you reach freedom without curiosity, you suddenly don't just become magically fulfilled because you hit a number on a spreadsheet. You'll become untethered, probably empty, and really restless. These little experiments now are how you build the muscle you'll need later. The ability to choose, the ability to engage, and the ability to trust your own interests again. They teach your nervous system something really important, that novelty isn't danger, it's actually fuel. They stretch your identity beyond work, long before work stops defining your days. So the next time you're feeling curious about something, and your brain starts immediately shutting it down or saying why you shouldn't do it, don't ask, will this work? Or even, will this turn into something? Ask the better question. Compared to what? Then choose the option that keeps you awake to your own life. Thanks for listening to Life After Enough, a podcast about money, meaning, and the life you design when work becomes optional. If this episode made you rethink your future, share it with someone who's starting to question the script too. You can follow the show wherever you get your podcasts. I'm your host, Nick, and I'll see you next week as we keep building a life that's truly ours.